Hi there. You have found Quantum Christianity, where we are learning how to be a Christian in a quantum world. I'm Patty Bowman. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, why don't you do that now? And then we'll move on to Lesson 12. After going through this 5-step process, I thought it might be helpful to get more practical. How do these 5 steps actually work in real life? Drawing on my own experience, I'm going to share with you a couple of examples. Several years ago, my DVD player was not working properly. I was afraid that one of the DVDs might get frozen inside and I would not be able to get it out. So I asked my sister for help. She had recently introduced me to Facebook Marketplace. She said yes, she'd be happy to help, and she asked me how much money I wanted to spend. I told her $10. When I left her house, she was busy on her phone. I went about the activities that I had to do that day. An hour or so later, I got a phone call. It was my sister. I found you a DVD player for $10. She was very excited. Great, I said. And then she asked me, when can we meet? When can you get away? And I gave her a time, and she said, okay, I'll call you back. It was a while later. She called back, and she said, this lady wants to meet with us before she goes to work. Can you get away earlier? And I said, yes. Just let me know when. And she said, I'll get back to you. So it wasn't very long when she got back to me with a time and a place. And I said, I can be there at that time, but I don't know where this is. And she answered, I do. Come pick me up. So at the appointed time, my sister and I arrived at the destination. We were a little bit early, and so we just chatted, and then here came the DVD player. We made our transaction and then headed to my house. My sister quickly set up the DVD player, attaching it to my TV. I popped in a disc, we turned it on, and yes, we had a movie. We were so excited. Hugs and high fives all around. And then I looked at my watch. It had been about 4 hours since I had first asked her for help. And that includes her getting batteries for the remote. That night, during my prayer time with Jesus, I was thanking him for the DVD player. He said to me, you used your 5-step process. And I paused for a moment to think about that. And he said, your sister played my part. In my mind, I was going through the 5-step process. Yes, I asked for help. I believed my sister was perfectly capable of handling it. By the time I left her house, I had totally surrendered. I didn't really think too much about it after that. And I never called her up to ask her, did you find anything yet? And then I thought, how did I listen? And then it came into my mind, the phone rang, and I answered it. That was my inspired action to take, which I took several times. I also showed up at the appointed place and time, and that's where I received. Wow, I didn't really even realize what I had done. And then Jesus said to me, It works that way every time. Now, some of you are thinking, well, that's really nice, Patty, but DVD players are easy to find. That's not a big deal. What I need is much bigger. Well, okay. How about a car? Is that big enough? A few months ago, I bought a car. About a year before that, God had told me, I want you to start thinking about buying a new car. And it had been several months, and I knew it was time. I did not want to be in a rush because my old car was breaking down. The first thing I did was call a friend who had worked on my car. He had said to me at one point, if you ever decide to sell this car, call me. So I did, and he said, no, thank you. So I was able to just check that off my list. The next step was to do some research because I didn't know what kind of car I wanted. Shopping for cars online is just not my thing. I like to get up close and personal with a car. So I narrowed it down to 2 dealerships, and off I went to look for cars. Now, I personally find car shopping intimidating and overwhelming. So I made a decision to go at my own pace. I didn't go to a dealership every day, and if I felt overwhelmed, I just stayed home and worked on other projects. Eventually, I decided on a car. It came in bits and pieces. There were family members who helped me out, but mostly I just listened to guidance and did my best to stay out of the overwhelm zone. It had been several weeks when one morning I got a phone call. It was my friend who had said no thank you about buying my old car. He had changed his mind. So we made a deal over the phone. Later in the afternoon, I felt God urging me to go back to a particular dealership and drive a particular car. It had been several weeks since I had test driven that car. I really didn't want to do that. But God said to me, no decisions, Patty, just drive the car and come home. So I did. When I got home, my brain began working with all this information that I had gathered over 4 weeks. And questions came up. I began to think, what if? And so I made some phone calls back to the dealership to clarify some questions I had. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't confused about anything. And then it happened. I began to notice synchronicities, and I paid attention. And pretty soon, it just seemed like things were coming together. So I left a message with a family member because I really wanted to talk through what was going on in my mind. And when the phone rang, it was a total surprise because it was a cousin who I hadn't talked to in years. We had gotten disconnected from each other. And I was so excited to hear from her. We talked for about 45 minutes. It was the best conversation. When I got off the phone, I was so happy and I felt so good about the car. Even though I hadn't talked to anyone, I hadn't talked through it with anyone. So I just went to bed. The dealership opened at 8 a.m. I was there at 2 minutes before 8. I found the salesperson I had been working with and told him, I am here to buy a car. That one. We started the paperwork and we were done in time for me to get to an 11 o'clock appointment that morning. When I got home, I called the dealership and they delivered my car. Then I backed my old car out of the garage and I called my friend who was buying my old car. As soon as they got there, we made the transaction. They got in my old car and they drove away. I got in my new car and pulled it into my garage. And it was all done. Everything had come together beautifully. Did it take 4 hours? No, more like 4 weeks. Why? Well, for starters, I didn't know what I wanted. I needed time to sort through all the possibilities. And then for me, there were bumps in the road because I would get overwhelmed easily. I did my best to listen. And that's all any of us can do. We look at small things like a DVD player and see that as easy. We look at big things like cars, like houses, like jobs, and see them as hard. But to God, it's all the same because everything is vibration. We're the ones that come up with the reasons why something is hard, difficult, complicated, or impossible. It is the same process every time. Thanks for listening. I hope that sharing my experiences has been helpful to you and inspired you to give it a try. You may have been using this process already and didn't know it. Let me know how it works out for you. Until next time, keep your light shining.